Welcome back to the Legal Weekly Wine. I am Virginia Tehrani.
And I'm Chelsey Rogers.
And we are here with Tehrani Law, LLC, because you never need a lawyer.
Till you do.
All right. As the Weekly Wine, we discuss, and here I go, it's been a faulty start. This is about the second or third time we've tried to start.
It is a day. We are just...
Hence the wine. So that's the wine part of the Legal Weekly Wine.
Yes.
The legal part of the Weekly Wine, with it being this week, it is currently, is it the 19th, 20th? I don't know. Of January. We're in January. It's whatever this Friday is.
Last Friday was the 13th, so it has to be the 19th.
No, 7
13th.
days. 20th? I don't know.
I went to law school because I can't do math.
This is the second time where we say we can't do maths, right?
Look, we are driving the struggle bus into the end of this week.
Yes, we are. Yes, that's why we are here for happy hour.
Absolutely.
On Friday afternoon, the 20th of January. And we hope that you're joining us to grab a glass of wine, a glass of whatever you would like. We are here drinking wine. And the topics we're going to hit that we think are the hottest legal topics in the U.S. this week, we have to hit Elon Musk.
Of course.
Right. That's the big one.
Yes.
We're going to go into more description, but Elon Musk is currently on trial, civil trial in California, not criminal, civil trial going on this week.
Federal court,
jury selection happened. We had opening statements. We've had audio that we've been able to pick up here and there, but it's not. You can't watch it live on video. So we're picking up what we can. We've at least got a broad basis that I think is fairly interesting.
There's a lot there.
There's a lot there. And then we are going to there's another one that isn't as visible.
Right.
But I think is a very hot topic.
Absolutely.
And I want to call out our Twitter friends who brought it up to our attention.
Yes.
Not specifically to us, but we follow them.
On TikTok.
Yeah, the law says what?
Yeah.
I think that's their handle for TikTok, or their name on TikTok is the law says what. They're they're a married couple from Harvard Law, and they give great descriptions of cases and legal issues. And the one that they were talking about that we picked up on and want to cover this week is a terrible case from Louisiana where a confidential informant was sent in by the police department in Louisiana, one of the police departments. And during the undercover buy, she was assaulted.
Yeah.
So
she's now suing them.
Yes, she is now suing them, which is why it's come up on our radar for the hottest legal topics. And we do a lot of, for those of you who don't know us, Tehrani Law handles accident injuries. So a lot of personal injury cases where we do civil cases. I've done a lot of criminal cases in my life, but right now we're focused on civil. And I think it's a really good place to discuss this case because it has a lot of criminal implications, but the civil ones are things that people don't always think of.
Yeah, it's another avenue for some sort of justice, if there is that.
For what it can be. If there is anywhere, and I'm a lawyer and she's a law student, and we're questioning what is justice and can you get it?
That's a big question.
It is a big question.
But it also shows just between these two cases, and I think we'll sprinkle in some other fun headlines that we've seen.
Yes, wait for a third one. If you get to the end, at the end of our drinking of wine and the end of this program for the tougher ones, we're going to try a lighter one.
A very fascinating note.
So stay tuned.
Yes, but this just shows the two main cases we're covering today show sort of the broad swath that civil law covers, right? You have these very, very different cases, but are both sort of under the same umbrella. Exactly.
And we're going to hit the same terms that we do, and we're going to talk about those. Yes. I love the civil law. I never thought I would say that.
Yes.
But I swear, for those of you who are listening, that it is just as fascinating. Not necessarily always as salacious, but just as fascinating.
Can be.
And it really can be.
Yeah.
Take all your big topics and they're civil too.
And then you just add a lower burden, right? Make
it easier.
Exactly. I don't know. I think it's more interesting than I expected it to be.
Right. I won her over.
You did.
so with our weekly wine, we're going to get, now that you know the broad topic. Oh, and why am I forgetting this? The theme
Oh, yes.
of today, Chelsey's brilliant, as any good trial attorney would do. As what we teach, what we were taught, what I teach other students and mock trial students that I have and coach is that finding a theme is the best way to go. For our theme, our overall broad topic of the day, Chelsey, you want to tell us?
Stop talking, which is like the best legal advice anyone could ever give you in any scenario. Just stop talking. Shut up.
So that's our theme. That's what we're going to go with. And we're going to tell you during each place, with each case, why people should stop talking, because you can get sued.
And those statements are going to be blown up in a courtroom.
For everyone to see.
Yeah.
So, all right, the wine part. This is always
it.
very exciting. We have today a raspberry wine. We are in Maryland.
Yes.
And so we're in Montgomery County, Maryland. We practice in Maryland, D.C., and Virginia, but we are physically in Maryland. And we have a Maryland wine.
Love it.
From Mount Airy, which is very close to where we live. It's kind of... According to my husband, I'm very poor with geography.
I didn't even know there were mountains in Maryland.
I don't think it's technically a mountain.
Is it just called it? Is it like a big hill? What are we talking about? I'm so sorry.
I think it's just the name of the city. But for those of you who are in or from Mount Airy, please describe in the comments exactly whether you consider yourselves to have mountains or hills or no hills at all, for both our sakes. So Mount Airy has Lowe's Winery, or Lowe Vineyards is how I should say it. I need to say it properly. And this is Maryland Raspberry and Grape, white wine with raspberry. So we both like raspberry, which is why we get to drink it. My husband does not like raspberry at all. So he's like, why don't you use this one?
We'll try it out. Yeah, let's do it.
So it says it's a sweet blend of white grapes and raspberries, served with special delicacies. Loves chocolate.
Ooh.
So we have chocolate. We have chocolate today.
I love it.
You're going to hear our wrappers for those of you who are listening and not watching. We have Dove chocolates. So we are, because it does love chocolate and we love chocolate, we're going to try to combine the two. You're going to hear our little wrappers.
Is that ASMR?
That's so funny. All right, so we're gonna open that, have some chocolate, and drink some wine.
Let's do it.
And cheers.
Yes, let's do our little cheers and a big clink. That's a good one.
Very nice.
You hear my gulp that time?
I did. I heard it.
Signature.
Everyone, it's Chelsey's signature gulp. It's only her.
That is really good.
It is really good.
Very good.
It is. It's almost like a port.
Ooh, yeah.
It's very strong flavored.
Yes, but not overpowering.
It's not overpowering, but it's a stronger flavor like a port to me. That it's not as light. It looks light, but it doesn't feel, at least to me, as light.
It's very flavorful. No. That makes sense.
It is very flavorful. Now, I don't like it as much as I liked your wine from the other week.
That wine does some damage.
It really does. I should not have had so much, but it was very good.
It's my favorite.
It's nice.
Okay, so what's going on? Tell me.
Good with chocolate.
It is good with chocolate.
Okay, they're not wine.
It does pair well. So I'm just going to be munching over here while you tell me what is happening with Elon Musk.
Okay.
I mean, there's a lot, but like...
Yes, there is a lot. And the question is, what's not happening with Elon Musk is probably the better question.
Yes.
But for today's purposes, what we're going to talk about is the current trial that he's in California, federal court, and it's based in San Francisco.
Okay.
And it's based there because that's where Tesla's headquarters are.
Oh, okay.
And that's why it seems to have been brought there.
That makes sense.
It is by Tesla stockholders, so shareholders, stock owners of Tesla Corporation. And it's brought against Tesla and Elon Musk himself.
Okay.
From the best that I can gather, since I'm not those attorneys and I don't work in California, from the news articles, and I think it's fairly clear. I mean, most of you listening who know about this will have pretty similar viewpoints as to what we do as to what's happening. Down and dirty, he made several tweets back in 2018.
Oh, that's a while ago.
It was. It takes a while for the civil law to crank and to come to fruition.
It's a federal system and COVID and yeah.
Yes, absolutely. That all of those factors just made everything, extended everything. And of course, because it's Elon Musk, it's going to be extended because there's so much lawyering, so to speak, that's going to be done. They're going to paper each other to death, right? And it's going to take so long to get through all of the motions that have been filed, all of the depositions and discovery that have been done.
I can't even imagine.
I mean, his legal fees alone.
I can't. I mean, I swear this man is being sued in like every state. That's an exaggeration, but like truly,
it's a lot.
Like going on at the same time, so many lawsuits. I don't know how he does it. I mean, I guess if you're that rich, like it doesn't matter. You're like, what are you going to do?
Legal team.
Sue me?
Right. And I mean, people in their business they had an ad budget. They have, cost of employment budget. They have overhead expenses. And he has a legal budget.
He just budgets it in. I know I'm going to tweet nonsense, so I'm just going to budget in the legal fees for it. Must be nice.
Well, yeah. And, those are the choices.
Yes.
That he has made. And in this case, it is part of his business choice. And this is where it gets him, is it's a jury trial. Now, he could have settled out, right?
Right.
Because we know that he did settle out at least one other very similar case.
Yes. So with this one, what exactly are the shareholders sort of alleging, or like what, cause of action? What are they talking about here?
Okay. So it's very similar to the securities fraud claim that the SEC brought against him.
Him and Tesla sort of individually and then
jointly.
Yes.
Correct. And that one was settled out for $20 million each, right?
Just a cool $40 million.
Right. I mean, I'll just pull that out of my back pocket to pass it along. Yeah. So that one was settled, but it was the same fact pattern where these shareholders, instead of being the SEC, they're Tesla stock owners, and they're saying, okay, you defrauded us. And based on the fraud, this is very down and dirty idea of it. Based on this fraud, we purchased or sold Tesla stock during this specific 10-day period in 2018 when these tweets went out. We relied on your statements, which were fraudulent, and now we've lost a lot of money from relying on your statements.
Okay. Do you know what the statements were?
Yes, hence my trusty notes. For those of you who are watching us and have been for a little while, I operate by writing and taking copious notes. And Chelsey's conveniently not saying anything because she knows our theme is stop talking. And it's better for her not to be saying anything.
It's true. Look, Virginia takes enough notes for me and her both.
It works, It
does.
It works for me.
Yeah, I just throw all of my thoughts at you and you write them down. It's great.
They all come to this. Both of our ideas come into my notes.
Yes.
So I'm going to pull those out and we're going to hear a little rustle. The notes that I have. Okay, the two particular tweets that this involves. The first is one that he put out that says, am considering taking Tesla private at $420, funding secured.
Ooh.
So that's one tweet. And then there's a follow-up tweet that I think goes a little farther, but the first sentence of it is the most important. That same day, he later tweeted a subsequent one saying, investor support is confirmed.
Ooh.
Those are the two tweets. So what happened, though, once these tweets went out?
My understanding is that rapidly, I think, like you said, it was a 10-day period. I think the percentages are like 9 and 11 of like drop and rise in sort of the price of Tesla stock, right? I mean, I don't really understand the stock market all that well, but that's essentially what happened. People were sort of rushing to either buy or rushing to sell Tesla stock in anticipation of what, going private, going public, whichever.
Going private.
That's what I
That's okay. We don't do maths, including stock market.
Yeah, no. I think I'm just going
I trust my Edward Jones consultant.
Exactly.
I do. Advisor. I even call her a consultant because I don't know. But yes, from the basics, for those who know stock trading much better than us, you're probably laughing at us.
Oh, they're cringing. They're like, that's
I'm
not
sure.
true.
And that's okay because we're a law show, not a stock show, not a financial show. So we're saying it in the layman's terms that we understand it, is the market went crazy, right?
Yeah.
That shares dropped and surged, and over a 10-day period, they even had to stop trading at one point.
Yeah.
They had to freeze it. And all of it was at least begun by these tweets.
So it sort of initiated it.
And these investors are saying, because of these tweets, we either purchased or sold, or both,
Right.
Tesla shares and lost overall with the amount of plaintiffs, the class action that it was, billions of dollars.
So, okay. What I do know about the stock market is that it's always a risk, right? So how are they able to say, they sort of engaged in the risk of buying and selling stock. How can they bring a suit?
Okay, so this gets, sorry, I'm bumping the table. This gets into, no, please eat your chocolate. I did not mean to.
No, I was about to eat it, but then I was like, oh no, I'm going to make noise. Y'all, I'm on another level today. I'm so sorry.
No, your phrase at the beginning really describes our Friday and the end of the week, but it's all good. It's absolutely good. Hopefully you're still listening. And we're going to get to more, I swear. So the way that they're doing this, and this gets back to the fundamentals of civil law and civil actions, okay, is the basics are by bringing a lawsuit, you're bringing a tort. You're bringing a civil lawsuit.
You did something that cost me money.
Yes, or caused me harm. And in this particular case, the harm is I lost money, right? That is the harm. You are alleging as a plaintiff that someone else did something to you that wasn't your fault.
Right. You did something wrong. It has damaged me, and I would like to be paid for that.
Yeah. Because ultimately your damages have to have a monetary value for a civil case. And if you want to dig a little bit deeper into this, we have another podcast, The Law Unscripted. And we do that on Tuesdays, every Tuesday. But there's one particular episode that we do that really breaks this down in much more detail about what is negligence, which is this overall tort. What are the elements of it? What do you have to prove?
Yeah.
And that's in What is Negligence? That is under that podcast title. And you can find that on YouTube or on your podcasting favorite.
Apple, Spotify, all of them.
Your favorite platform. We'll put a link to that in the description for both the podcast and the YouTube version so that you can find it if you want to dig a little bit deeper. But basically what they're going to have to prove is Elon Musk and Tesla had some kind of duty to us.
Okay.
They broke their word.
Right.
They breached that duty. They caused us damages. So it's kind of four different things. The caused us damages is two parts, that there's a cause to your damages and that there are damages.
Okay. So let me see if I'm tracking this, right?
Yeah.
They're saying that sort of Tesla and Elon, I'm just going to refer to them together for the purposes of this. You had a duty to give out statements that were true and or accurate.
Yeah.
You did not do that. And because you were supposed to and you didn't, I relied sort of on that.
Yes.
Detrimentally.
Right. To my detriment. Absolutely.
And so you should have to pay for that, right? Like, is that the sort of
That's the great
simple
breakdown.
Okay. So if I was his attorneys, fleet of attorneys at this point.
Right. Which one? But yes, attorney plural.
Would you not just say sort of as a response from his side of like, who would rely on a tweet to make a huge financial decision?
Especially one from Elon Musk.
Right. Like, is that not a defense?
It is exactly the defense that they're doing.
Because, I mean, I may not be a financial consultant, but I don't know if I'm going
to... Would you rely on such a tweet? And that is the statement. And, you know, the not funny, haha, but the interesting thing about exactly what you're saying is this even goes back to last week's episode where we were talking about President Trump getting sued.
Yeah.
Okay? Because they're similar, like them, hate them, whichever. And that's part of what we're going to talk about.
The figure of it.
The very public figure that is using tweets.
Right.
Right? Both of them are using tweets, and both of them are talking excessively in public. Please stop talking.
That is
everyone
the theme.
Who's a political figure.
And tweeting is included in that?
It's a form of speech, right? It is a form of talking. And what's happening is people are getting sued because of what they are saying. If you don't say anything, you don't always you don't get sued as much. Right?
And you certainly even if you do get sued, there's not a lot of evidence. Like, essentially, if you're talking all the time, you're giving statements, you're tweeting things, all that is just bolstering the evidence. That's it. That's all of
what did you say? Oh, here it is.
Yeah.
Oh, here's another page.
Receipts on receipts on receipts, right? Like,
yeah. So neither of them stopped talking. And
clearly.
Both of them. So for Trump, we were saying that there's this wrongful death civil suit against him now for what he said or didn't say, but especially what he said on the January 6th riots to create or stir up the crowd and to stir up violence is the question there that his defense is going to rely on is, well, really, how much did people rely on what Trump was saying?
Right, like what a reasonable person. It's kind of I didn't even realize the parallels were that close, but that makes a lot of sense to me. Is that sub out these plaintiffs, would a reasonable person in either of their positions respond the way they did?
Yes.
And if they did, they might have a claim, right?
Absolutely. If a reasonable person would have done the same thing, acted in the same way in response to Trump's tweets or his speech or the things that he did.
Or Elon's,
Elon Musk, would a reasonable person have looked at those tweets and thought, wow, now's a good time to invest?
Yeah. Or would any reason, from his side, the defense is no reasonable business person would do that, right?
But it's not even just a business person.
Right. You really do have
who there's at least one in the opening statement
it's so sad.
That the plaintiff's attorney in opening statements was talking about a particular plaintiff who saw these tweets and for the first time, apparently, it seems to be in his life decided, oh, wow, now's a great time to invest in Tesla. And dropped money down thinking this is going private and there's funding and I can get $4.20 a share. And it didn't happen. So what he's saying is I didn't invest before. And I certainly had never invested in Tesla before.
Wow.
But because I heard this businessman who's in charge of this amazing company say that he was going to take this private and this was going to be the share value, I believed him.
Right.
And I did something I would not normally have done, but I'm a reasonable person.
Right.
Not even a business person. I'm a reasonable investor. I paid enough attention to shares and stocks where I heard this and I thought, now's a good time to invest, or others who thought now's a good time to sell.
Yeah.
I can make some money. Both, at least in this allegation, were negatively impacted and lost.
Right. And that's because
a lot of money.
It really is about the causation. Like at this point is not a debate about the truth of the tweets. Like that has been decided. So now it really is. They've been determined in a court to be false statements.
Yes.
Right?
You're absolutely
perfect.
right.
I was making sure. I was like, I don't know if I'm just making that up in my head.
No, that's exactly what's already happened.
Okay, so it really is the causation of like, was this the impetus for these people's losses?
Yeah. Did it cause them? So there's two factors. There's one is, would a reasonable person have relied on them and believed that this was going to make them money? And then because they relied on them, taken steps, bought or sold the stock to try to make that money. But then there's the secondary portion that's still up for grabs.
Okay.
For the defense. I don't know how it's going to play out.
Right.
I will say I think that the plaintiffs have a solid case. Like you said, half of the case is already won. The biggest half, the judge has already decided in the plaintiff's favor that at least the investor support is confirmed was a false statement. Yes. That it's been pre-decided. In opening statement, the plaintiff's attorney told the jury, the judge has already decided that this was a false statement.
Absolutely.
And that it was made with reckless disregard for the truth. Wow. So that's already decided. So duty, he had a duty because he is the CEO or was the CEO of Tesla at that time.
Look, I took business administration. If you are a CEO, you have a duty to your shareholders.
Yeah. And you have, at the very least, very minimal duty to be truthful.
To not lie, right?
Right. I mean, it seems basic, but just in case you didn't know, that's your minimum duty as a CEO for your shareholders is don't lie. And if you can't not lie, don't talk.
Yeah. Right? Like, that's the thing. That's why it's the theme. All of this could have been avoided by them just shutting up. Like, you don't need to. Look, I'm guilty of this. I like a good tweet. I like to send out my thoughts, but no face, no case. Like, not tweets that I would be like, well, I'm just confessing to a crime. Like, oh my God. Right. Or not a crime, or like whatever it is.
Yeah.
I mean, there are those too.
Yeah, there are definitely those. That's happening on TikTok right now.
Yes, that was sort of the inspiration.
Yeah, we've got a lot of inspiration from TikTok this week. But yes, so the issue for him is he did say something.
Yes.
Okay. So he had a duty, he breached that duty. The question is, were his tweets and some of the words that he said were the false statements the reason these people lost money?
Interesting.
Is there another reason that the market would have fluctuated and done such highs and lows, and had the erratic behavior for a stock market over the next 10 days? Is there another reason it would have done that? And even if it was a part of the cause of the market fluctuation, was it all of it?
So, okay, and I think this is the part that gets, we've talked about this before, sort of battle of the experts type of situation. I'm assuming, I like to try to think through this, like, how do you prove these? Especially things like this. They're very complicated. Do you just hire someone who's like an investment banker or some sort of expert about stocks, come in and say, well, normally it would fluctuate by whatever percentage. And then, however, historically or normally or whatever, and this is the, maybe it's 3%, it went up to 7%, there's a 4% unusual change. And then he might be responsible for sort of some percentage based on that.
I think that's what they're going to have to do.
That's interesting.
We are going to be watching it over the next couple weeks. It's projected to 3 weeks now.
Yeah.
They could settle out at any time and stop it. So it could be stopped. But assuming it goes on, it's projected for about 3 weeks. So we're going to hit it at least updates, in passing with updates over the next couple weeks. But I don't see any other way they can do it. Yeah. In my mind, it's exactly what you're saying, is they have to put on at least one expert to show for the plaintiffs that there are certain normal market fluctuations. Right. There are reasons that the market behaves the way that it does. Here's how Tesla's shares were behaving before these statements.
Right.
Here's how we normally would have predicted them to continue behaving without the statements.
And here's what happened.
Here's what happened. Here's the actual fluctuations. And here's what we believe would have happened without them. Here's how we believe that some percentage would have been caused for just the flurry of we may be going private.
Yeah.
And that's what they're going to have to say is, okay, well,
right,
even if he had just tweeted out, we might be going private, that would have caused a stir.
Yeah.
That would have caused buying and selling and more trading and fluctuations. And the plaintiff says, no. It's because he said he had a buyer, right? He said he had financing.
So even if causation is sort of determined to say, yep, we think this caused damages, then, Elon's team is, like you said, going to try to mitigate the amount of those damages and say, well, anything he tweets changes the market.
Yes.
And so, that makes sense to me.
It does.
But then you have, this is the fun part of this. You just have normal people on a jury hearing all of this, right?
Yeah, 9 people on a jury. So in California, it's not 12 people. 12 people is for criminal. In the areas we practice, it's 6 members of a civil jury. Yes. But in California, it's 9. So they have 9 members of a jury sitting regular people. Yeah. And honestly, we saw some about the jury selection. And there wasn't much in the news as far as what kind of employment the prospective jurors had. But as someone who has chosen juries, I would do everything I could on either side to take out anyone with a lot of experience in stock market trading.
Oh, for sure. And I think that Elon's team had filed a motion for like a change of venue because they're like, we can't get a fair trial in San Francisco.
San Francisco, yeah.
Right? There's too many tech people here. We can't get a fair trial. Everybody knows who Elon is. It doesn't matter where in the country you're going.
And that's what the judge said. I love this judge because he basically said everyone knows who Elon Musk is. And if you're the defense, the judge is saying, well, you also have a lot of people who love Elon Musk.
Yes.
So wherever you go, you're going to get 2 very exaggerated thoughts, so to speak, because he's a very polarizing person.
Yeah, I think just normal people have very polarized opinions about him.
Yeah, there aren't too many in-betweens, and the judge is saying, okay, you're going to have the extremes with the people who hate him, but you're going to have the other extreme of the people who love him.
And so we talked a little bit about this earlier. It's not just, especially in a case like this that is so high profile, they're not just asking jurors, do you know who Elon Musk is? Do you have any opinions about him? Because pretty much everybody you're going to call in a jury pool is going to answer yes to both of those.
Most likely. It would be hard. You'd be hard pressed to find someone who did not know who Elon Musk is, or at least not know what Tesla is.
Yeah.
And then, then say, well, if you know that Elon Musk is associated with Tesla, do you have opinions about him? I mean, it's hard to find someone like that.
But that's what I thought was interesting is those really aren't the questions. They're saying, even with whatever opinion you have, can you be fair? That is the question. It's not, do you already have some sort of thoughts about him? And there's a couple really great quotes from some of the
lines. That one woman I loved.
She, not to butcher the quote, but she essentially said, yes, she had some opinions about Elon before coming in. She didn't really like him. But she thought she could be fair because at some point you don't like everybody. And she said, sometimes I don't even like my husband. Oh my God. Icon.
I love this woman. She's my personal hero because that is some honesty and some hilarious honesty.
I mean, I would want her on a jury. If you're going to be honest like
Either
that.
side, done on my jury. Do not take her off.
Right, because she's going to say what she thinks. That's what I would want.
She's being honest.
Yeah.
She's being more honest than the jurors you never hear from.
Right.
The jurors
who are like,
don't say anything.
I have never had a thought before this moment, actually.
Well, until you get into the actual jury, and then you have a ton of thoughts that I never heard. You never told me, so I didn't know.
I have tried to sneak onto, not sneak, but like gotten called for, I wanted to be on a jury so bad. You guys don't understand. So, I mean, clearly, if you've listened to any of these or spoken to me, I have a lot of opinions about basically everything, and they're very strong.
She does.
I also have like a face that is very expressive. I was trying so hard. It was I'll never forget it, because I got all the way to like, they were essentially cutting people each thing, and we get into the courtroom. There's like 20 of us. And I'm like, oh my God, this is it. I'm going to be on a jury. I was so excited. Like, I was so excited. And then they start talking about, like, it was almost like mini opening statements of like what it was going to be about. And it was some big like trucking transportation company who killed this like grandma because they didn't do their jobs right. Or, it was like something was wrong with the truck that was like
a wrongful death.
Oh, right. Like a wrongful death. And I just couldn't control my face. Like I had to be looking at them like every time like this company's attorneys got up, I was just like side-eyeing. I was gone. I was the first one gone out of the courtroom. I was so upset about it.
Yeah, as an attorney, I would watch out for you.
I have to learn how
absolutely would have.
Control my face.
Because even if you never say anything, if I can see you, I would absolutely strike you. Even if it's not for cause.
They literally the first one in the room. They're like, you're gone. And I was
preliminary strike.
Yes. I was so offended. I was like, please no, please. I'll be good.
Yeah. So I think they're doing the best they can. I love at least the people we heard.
Yes.
I think he's got the best chance. Both sides have the best chance of a fair trial that they're going to get.
Yeah.
We'll be absolutely fascinated to hear more of how the trial progresses as far as the causation issues as to did those particular statements cause the behavior? Were they reasonable in relying on the statements?
See, that's the one where I think, I mean, as someone who doesn't know anything about this, that to me seems like the strongest argument, but I don't know.
It's a decent one. But the plaintiffs, all they have to show is that more likely than not.
Right.
A reasonable person would have relied on these untrue statements to buy or sell the stock, and that they were damaged. Yeah. And I think the best case that the defense can make in this case is to limit that damage, to say, okay, well, there would have been some volatility anyway, even if Musk had just put out part of the statement, even if he had just said, I'm considering going private, that there still would have been some fluctuation. You still would have lost some money, but not as much, and so then, that they decrease the value.
And then even if it's, okay, well, we don't find Tesla or Elon 100% at fault. Like, you know, there is some personal accountability of like you chose to do it. That could factor in, right?
It could. Yeah. The defense is going to have to basically say, well, you didn't have to buy any stock.
Right.
You didn't have to do anything.
That to me,
you didn't have to be a shareholder.
Maybe I'm dumb. That's very convincing to me of being like, this is not a reasonable decision, right? Like that's very convincing to me. We'll see what other people think. But if I was on the jury, I'd be like, yeah, I don't know, man. I wouldn't have done that.
Yeah, but it's, a reasonable person who is considering the stock market.
Right.
In any way. I mean, people bought McDonald's back in the day and they didn't ever buy stock before.
Right.
And now look at McDonald's. So it's, the question of a reasonable person is going to be a good one to follow. Right. And these are the topic. These are the pieces of the case that will have to be proved.
Yes.
And these are the things that will need to be considered. These are the things we expect to see over the next couple weeks. Yeah. We will touch back on those.
Absolutely.
Next week, give you an update as to what's happening that we know about from what we can find. I will not be able to listen all day, every day of my work day to what's happening. But for when I can, I will be listening and we'll grab the pieces.
I love it.
So now we are going to hop over to the second topic of today, which is this crazy case in Louisiana.
This is nuts. And I think that when he brought this up, this woman was serving as a confidential informant for the sheriff's office in a parish in Louisiana.
Yeah.
They essentially gave her a microphone and a camera, like a tiny, just like you would see on like Law and Order
type of camera. Yeah.
To go into this known drug dealer's home and purchase drugs. While having that, it seems that she was under the impression that the video feed was being monitored live.
Well, we don't know if she had the impression. We know it wasn't monitored live, right. But I don't know what her impression was.
That's true. I phrased that wrong. Is that there seemed to be we don't really know. And because of what happened, her name has not been publicly released, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, when she went in to make the buy, she was assaulted violently, and the police, who were sort of sitting a block down, didn't know and didn't do anything because they didn't know.
Yeah, so she has sued. That was back in January of 2021, and she has now sued for damages. The allegations, another civil lawsuit tort. She's alleging that the police department and specific individual players had a duty of care to her.
Yes.
And that because the camera was not live,
right,
that they breached that duty and they did not help her.
Right.
when they could have, and she was sexually assaulted twice and very, very violently.
From all the reports that we've seen, there were local officials who were saying it was kind of the most brutal account or assault that they have seen in their careers. What I think is interesting is that we've talked about this a couple of times. Duty is not usually the issue.
It's not usually the issue. It's usually causation.
This is interesting because in, again, the video that sort of spurned this conversation on TikTok, they say it. The police don't really owe a general duty to protect and serve, as this TikTok video said. It's a slogan.
It is, but it's not a general duty to every single the member of the public.
Right. So to owe a duty in this situation, you have to have some sort of specialized relationship, right?
Yeah, you have to have created not just your average person on the street, but you have to have created a different, special relationship with this person to be able to create a duty to that person for their care.
So that's what she's sort of alleging in this suit, is that because she was a confidential informant, she did have a specialized relationship with the police officers. And that, from my understanding, seems to vary a lot whether or not that is true. State to state, jurisdiction, a lot. There's a lot of sort of, not one answer to whether or not that is considered a specialized relationship.
Yeah, that's going to be a hard one. In the face of this, the response, and even my gut response is, of course they did. They sent her in there. They wired her up.
Yes.
They put that camera on. They put it on and sent her in there.
To someone they knew. Like, it was someone they specifically wanted to arrest.
Yeah.
And they asked her specifically, it wasn't like, just go find anybody, it was go into this person's home.
Yes.
So
it
seems like a specialized relationship to me.
This wasn't someone who walked in off the street and says, I want to be a confidential informant. So
Sign me up, yeah.
Yeah, the way that confidential informants work, usually, is that there's someone who is facing a charge of their own. And in this particular case, apparently there were felony drug charges that she was facing.
I think it was possession, yeah.
I think so. And what they do is there's a discussion that's had, whether they volunteer or suggest it, or whether the police say, oh, well, we have a way for us to figure this situation out.
Right.
They sign up with the police to become a confidential informant, where they have an agreement where they will do specific things for the police in order to get police information, police the information that they want. And by doing these things, that they work off some of these charges. They will knock a felony down to a misdemeanor. They will get rid of charges. Depends on the deal that they make. But generally, the confidential informant relies on the deal.
Yes.
Right? That they believe that they are going to get the deal that the police says will drop your felony down to a misdemeanor.
Right.
I don't know if that was the deal, but
we don't know what the deal is.
Hypothetically, I'll drop your felony down to a misdemeanor if you go into that guy's house, make this buy for us, catch it on camera. So she says, okay, and she agrees.
Yes.
And takes this risk by going in, putting on a camera in hopes that if she does this, catches it on camera and comes back, that hypothetically she'll get the deal, whatever the deal is. So this is what's usually set up. Yeah. And the big reason I say this is, I'm going to call out somebody else that I love.
Yeah.
I love Joe Kenda. Okay.
Yes.
Chelsey knows this. Lieutenant Joe Kenda. I love him. For those of you who don't know him, he's on the ID channel and he's the homicide hunter. And Chelsea's laughing. I am obsessed with him and his shows. He is the most salty, funny,
like weathered old
detective, homicide detective, who has the most fascinating career. And they did a whole 11 series or something on his cases and career. And one of the things that keeps resonating with me about this case is he has said multiple times on this show, through multiple seasons, of one of the riskiest jobs you will ever have is as a confidential informant. And he says this over and over. And there's one, I wish I could remember the quote. I should have looked it up. But there's another quote of, where he talks about not only is it risky, but it's a game of Russian roulette. You are really risking your life. Confidential informants don't live long. I mean, there's a lot of these statements that he makes of how risky it really is, whether you're a one-time informant or a long-time informant, that you're playing in this world. You're not informing on a local, church. What hymn did they sing that Sunday morning? You're informing on drug buys, sex operations.
And usually it is people who are at a lower level. So like this woman, our understanding is that she has some sort of substance abuse issues, but she's not like the distributor.
We don't know that though, do we?
All of her charges said possession. So
her charges said possession. And in our assumption, we are believing that she was low level. But this is what's going to have to be shown in the case, is what is her level of involvement in the drug trade in Rapides County, Louisiana, or Rapides Parish, Louisiana, is what was her affiliation with the
that was
drug
an assumption
world.
That was an assumption on my part.
And it's a good assumption,
especially because we don't know her name, because we don't like to publish the names of people who have been sexually assaulted.
Of course.
So that's definitely, I will say that, good caveat. Yeah. It's my assumption that you don't sort of get the kingpin to inform on himself, right? Like you get people who are sometimes lower, right? That's why they want to make the deal, is that as a prosecutor or someone who's concerned about public safety, you'd much rather take the high level person than get, like a possession or a drug paraphernalia charge.
That is generally the way that it goes. Generally, lower level players are used to catch higher level players.
Right.
That's generally how it happens. Every once in a while, you get a high player.
Right.
And you send them after another high player. But yes, generally, it's the lower level. I was a prosecutor in Newport News, Virginia, which Newport News, Virginia was in the news recently.
Last week we talked about it.
Last week we talked about that too. So for Trump and Newport News, find that from last week's episode. But while I was a prosecutor, I was on the drug, guns, and gangs team. And we worked with a lot of confidential informants.
I bet.
So I know a fair amount about this world, as much as I can. I was a prosecutor, not a detective. So most of my work with confidential informants was I would get those videos.
Right.
I would be the one that detective comes in and says, here, Virginia, here's the video. I need you to figure out what charges you're going to do.
That was my question. I was going to say, is it sort of the in these scenarios, I don't know. Is it the detective sort of recommending a charge to you as the prosecutor? Is that how it generally goes?
Generally, because
for the CI, not for whoever they're videoing.
Well, both.
Okay.
It was often both, because they can only enforce a deal if the prosecutor does it.
Right.
Because the prosecutor is the one
who has the authority to do that.
Who has the authority to change, drop, or make a charge.
Right. Charge
but especially amend or drop a charge.
Right.
And the judge then has to order it. But the prosecutor is the only one who can really recommend it.
Yeah. Oh, no. I knew that for sure. I just meant sort of in the practical things. Like, is that usually how it plays out? Is it, the detective says, hey, I'm working with the CI. They were arrested for this. Is there any way we could get it to this? Like, what is that sort of dynamic like?
That's part of it, is they have to say, would you approve this? And sometimes they do it before the buys.
That would make the most
sense. So
sense
sometimes
to me.
they come in and they say, look, would you approve this?
Yeah.
Yes, I'd approve this. Sometimes they'll have us go into the interviews with them and say, give us the information. Then as the prosecutor, I would be in there and I would approve certain agreements or deals before they even go in. Other times they would do the buys without me. I would have no idea that this was happening.
Wow.
They'd bring it in and say, we would like to give this person this deal. Are you in agreement? And by the way, did you watch the video?
Yeah.
What charges do you want to do there? And we'd bring it before a grand jury. Because we don't want to just go, especially if it's a higher player, we don't want to just go arrest the person, because then they'd go through lower court first. And we would have to do a preliminary hearing.
Okay.
And I would have to produce my confidential informant at the preliminary hearing. I don't want to produce my confidential informant at the preliminary hearing. I don't want to produce them at all, but they're confidential for a reason.
Right.
And if I just bring them to court every time there's a court proceeding, I've now burned my confidential informant, right? I can't use them anymore. And now they're at a higher risk because they've just testified in court.
Right.
So if I'm going to use a confidential informant in a trial, I'm going to direct indict one of the higher players.
That's interesting.
Using the testimony in grand jury testimony, not in public testimony.
Right.
Are you blown away?
Like these are things I know. We talk about this all the time. I know these things we're talking about sort of in the law school way of it, of like, I understand what a grand jury is. I understand what all of these things are, but I guess I've never really like thought through the steps of like how you would do this. So I am very interested in this.
These are the practical sides.
It's the practical, because like I said, everything you're talking about, I'm like, oh yeah, yep, I know that. I understand that. But I guess I've just never had the opportunity to like think through everything you would have to do. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So and then you hope to make a deal so that you don't have to burn your informant. Because you don't, generally the idea is you actually care for the people that, whether you have a duty, I don't know. But here's where we get to the don't talk. Okay, we're coming back to our
I want to go to
theme.
duty first because
go to duty and then we're going to go back to the theme. Please
This is my last comment on it because, I have to give my strong opinions.
Please do.
My sarcastic sort of tongue-in-cheek argument would be, well, if there's not a special relationship, are they putting that much camera equipment? Are they going to get, like, that is money. That is money. That equipment is money. You're just going to put equipment worth, what, a couple $100,000 on a random person? You're not going to do that. There is a relationship.
And that's the best argument.
I mean,
it really is.
That's all I can think of, honestly.
That they have at least told her in some way or another that they are going to protect her. Right. I don't think she nor any other person would go into that kind of situation without an idea of there would be protection. Now, some of them do. And I will say there are some that, especially more men who are confidential informants, is they'll be like, look, I'll just go do this buy. I'll go down to the street. I'll hook up with Joe and do this buy.
Right.
But to go into an actual dealer's house, to send them in, especially as a woman, for a man that had an extensive criminal background.
Yes, we don't know exactly, but the report said 3 decades worth of charges. And what I sort of had the question of, and we don't have an answer to, is this 3 decades of only drug charges, which would
violent
be
crimes.
Shocking, I think, for someone who's in the drug trade for 30 years to not have any violent crimes would be surprising. But I think it's a much different conversation if this person had a history, convictions for assault or sexual assault, and she knew that. Did she know that?
Right.
What was the record? Was she aware?
Is she the one that said, I know a guy, I'll go into his house and I'll make this buy? Yes. Or were they the ones that said, I know this guy, I know this house, I want you to go there? That's going to be a lot of the questions, is how did this get set up? Who instigated it? Who suggested it? Who said it was this person, this house, this time? And did she know or appreciate the risks that she was getting into?
Like, it's inherently risky to buy drugs from a drug dealer. Like, I don't think that's sort of at issue here. But I do think, as someone who has not been a confidential informant and not bought drugs, to me, there is a very different risk from someone who has, they have a long criminal record, but it's all sort of drug crimes. They've stolen things, they've sold drugs, versus someone who has 30 years worth of like assaults. Right? Like, that is a very different scenario to me.
So what did they know? Presumably he's a bigger player, which is why they were using a confidential informant to get a video of him. If they knew, let's be honest, all police officers should know that drug dealers, the things you find on them the most, and the reason you recognize them as a drug dealer is how many phones do they have on them? How many guns do they have on them? How much cash do they have on them?
Like, just common sense. I have never been a drug dealer, to clarify. But I'm saying I would not sell drugs without a gun.
Right.
Like, to me, like, again, not that I've done this, but that would seem ludicrous to me.
Yes.
To meet up with people who want drugs and just have no way to defend yourself. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. I'm sorry. And maybe that's like a dumb statement, but like, I don't see, like, why.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do that. That sounds risky.
So did they by suiting her up with any kind of equipment and agreeing to a deal with her.
Right.
Figuring out where she was going to go, telling her to go there. Did they create a special relationship that rises to the level of a duty to her?
Yeah.
And the other question is, did they breach it? What was the actual duty they owed versus the perceived duty?
Yeah.
The perceived duty is, dude, you got to come in and help me.
Right. And this is where we get to the stop
something.
talking. Because apparently, for everyone up from Tesla CEO to local sheriff's officers, just like to run their mouths, for lack of a better word. And we have plenty of statements that I think, even if, the evidence sort of is not as conclusive, I think these statements,
it's horrifying.
They look terrible. And so we
Such
do
bad
know
PR.
There was some sort of conversation that she was in there for too long. Mm-hmm. And the two officers who were in the vehicle discussed her being in there for too long, kind of mulled around the idea of going in and didn't.
Yeah.
And this is not the most egregious part, but that, to me,
it's still rough.
It's bad.
Maybe they should have.
But that shows that they like consciously, it wasn't even like, oh, we thought this was a normal time for a buy. No, like that is actual knowledge. Something was different than normal.
Yeah, that it was different. It was taking too long. But then there's the secondary part, which is, and one of the people individually named in this lawsuit is retired Lieutenant Mark Parker, who was apparently the ranking official who was overseeing the entire buy operation. And according to the web,
I think it's Associated Press.
Yes, thank you. It is the Associated Press. That the quote that he made, I don't know I think it was in response to this lawsuit.
Yes, they gave statements to the Associated Press investigative reporter. That's where it came from. And
this is why I have my notes on a bar table. We've always done it this way. She was an addict. And we just used her as an informant like we've done a million times before. That's part of it. The final part is looking back, it's easy to say, what if, end quote. But truly shocking.
So, I mean, he's talking about her like she's not a person.
Right.
Like just the whole tone of it is like, oh, she's just an addict. We just use them. Gross, 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 gross.
Yeah. What do they expect? What, this is supposed to happen to them?
Right.
This is a common thing. We expect this. We're okay with this.
That is the total tone of it, right? I understand that sort of being a confidential informant has inherent risk. I don't think that there's any way to have informants without some danger and probably some people being harmed.
But this
and just to like double down on it and be like, yeah, it happened. She's an addict. What was supposed to happen? Gross. Yeah. So gross. Good thing he's retired.
We just used her as an informant. Well, that doesn't mean that an informant
done it a million other times.
Right. It doesn't mean that this is the way that things should happen or the things that should happen to an informant. They do take on certain risks, but was one of the risks that she was supposed to take on getting sexually assaulted? I don't know.
Yeah. And I think that, and I don't know, you can tell me if this would sort of factor in. After this incident, and like not when the suit was filed because that's recent, but after the incident, they upgraded all of their technology to have the sort of live transmission. Seems like you knew you were in the wrong if that's your first move right after this happens.
And that's why there are evidence rules. A lot of civil law and civil evidence rules, or evidence rules that affect civil cases.
Oh, is this a thing where you can't penalize them for taking?
Yes, retroactive.
We want to encourage people to fix the issue.
Right. So a lot of times you're not allowed to ask, especially in front of a jury, whether they fixed an issue or changed an issue or did something different after the fact. Because there is an inclination that would prejudice a jury that would say, well, if you fixed it, you did have a problem.
Right.
If you changed it, you knew you had a problem. Well, not necessarily. So there's a lot of evidentiary rules. I don't know the evidence in Louisiana, which is a different system than most
they have
of
their whole, it is
the country.
Very different.
Very, very different evidentiary system. Very different court system. They're based more on the Napoleonic Code. Is that what it is?
That's my understanding. But like they are the only state that has their judicial system and legal system sort of set up differently, right? Like it's just them.
Yeah, they're different.
If you know anybody who's an attorney in Louisiana, let us know because...
See if you can, if there's a Louisiana attorney who can comment on this, we would love to hear it. Because these are just our general impressions based on the normal civil law, at least what we have in Maryland, DC, and Virginia. And I think most of the states, and then just some criminal law. I'm going to save, maybe we come back to this one. I have a couple more stories to throw in, but we're at that hour mark, and I hate to go too much over, respecting what else you have to do on a Friday night. But I don't want to miss our little fun thing at the end. But what I do want to wrap up to say is that whatever has happened here, it is absolutely appalling that she was victimized.
Yes.
Whether it's the police department's fault, so to speak, legally, I don't know.
Yeah.
But it sure feels
like there should be
something should have been done differently. And it is not uncommon, or was not uncommon. And I will say, when I was prosecuting in 2012 to 14 in Newport News, we didn't have many live videos either.
Really?
We just didn't. It wasn't the thing to do at the time. It was, while I was there, was the first time police officers were wearing body-worn camera. Wow. It was the first time. Back in 2013, 2014, we were on the cusp of that body-worn camera. Now it's like everybody wears body-worn cameras, but they forget how recent it was. It was 2013, 2014, where we started to see police using body-worn cameras. Newport News was one of the pilot programs.
Wow.
And TASER came in and trained us all and showed us how it was going. I mean, we were one of the few jurisdictions in the whole country that started it.
Yeah.
So police didn't even wear body-worn cameras that have live action.
Right.
And even the body-worn cameras, let's face it, it's live, but who watches it live?
Yeah, like, are you paying an officer to sort of sit there and just watch it?
Police officers, even with the body-worn cameras, record what's happening, and then we watch it later.
Yeah.
So let's be honest, when looking at this, even police officers don't have real-time cameras.
Right. This is not like
they have record.
Law and Order Criminal Minds of them in a van outside the house. Like, right? Like, ideally, that would be great.
That would be fantastic. It would be best practices.
Yes.
And maybe truly something seems like it could have been done differently or should have been done differently. I hope for this woman's sake that she can get something from someone. I don't know who it's going to be and what she's going to have to prove specifically for Louisiana. I will say it is a tragic case. It has so many marks on civil law and criminal law, on confidential informants, drug deals, all of that it touches.
Yeah.
And it's a very risky world, but it shouldn't have been that.
Right.
No matter what risk they were taking. So on the sad note, we're going to pop over to Chelsey to give us just a snippet of the other random thing in the news on our theme of stop talking.
So this is what I am very, very excited about. And I will preface this with saying there's a lot that has not been confirmed. So this is not saying that this is true or this is not. But if you have seen the news recently, there are reports that have been coming out yesterday and today that Carol Baskin's husband is alive. And if you don't know who Carol Baskin is, I'm going to need to rewind you back to 2020. Yes. It is beginning of COVID. Tiger King is out. We have Joe Exotic. We have Carol Baskin. You know, like, if you're on TikTok, it was like killed her husband, whacked him, loved it, thought it was hysterical.
A whole song?
Whole song.
Song and dance routine on there.
We are now, and Tiger King 2 has come out, which is the second part. I have not seen that.
I haven't. I didn't see either. I think I'm one of the very few people in America that didn't even watch the first one.
It was so bad I couldn't look away. I think that was the problem, right? But, and this is, like I said, yesterday and today, reports that her husband has been found alive in Costa Rica, and that some letter from the Department of Homeland Security confirms this. I'm not saying this is true.
We don't have the letter. We haven't seen such a letter. We don't know if it actually exists.
Well, there's like a blurry picture of it. So that is not authenticated. But
if true,
all the people who ran their mouths about her killing her husband and feeding him to the tigers. I don't know how I just said that with a straight face.
It's so horrible that I'm laughing over the possibility that someone was killed and fed to tigers. I'm sorry.
That's what Joe Exotic, that was his whole bit. He was like, she cut this man up and fed him to the tigers. And that's why there's no evidence. I mean,
so many people believed it. Still believe it.
Some people still believe it. I would also like to say, I think if this is true, right? The defamation and libel, like, there is, like, I just think that would be a strong case, personally.
It is such a strong case. If this man pops up
and they can prove it,
all of these years, and they can prove that he is alive.
Yes.
Yes. So many possibilities for a lawsuit for defamation and libel.
Because, I mean, yeah, people were not just hinting at it. There were plenty of people who were like, Carol Baskin killed her husband and fed him to tigers, just like that.
They were stating it as truth.
Yes, including, this is so, I like to be nosy on the internet. So I'm like, okay, I wonder if Joe Exotic has heard about this.
Of course.
Of course. Well, he has, and through his attorney, who, I have a lot of feelings about attorneys putting out their own personal opinions about their clients, whatever. I found Joe Exotic's attorney's Facebook. Okay. Deep dive on the internet. Like to be the FBI. And he is still maintaining this is all a lie. This is all fake. Which, again, those are real serious things to say.
They're stating them as truth.
Truth. And they are still maintaining that killed her husband Watkin. Like, they're still maintaining that. So I would be very curious to see if this can be proven. And if so, if she does sue people, because she would have, I think, a very strong claim if she did.
For defamation of character.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, how much
it doesn't get worse than that than saying you're a murderer. And
how is my character not affected? For how many decades have people been saying that she's a murderer?
Right.
You can't say much worse about a person.
I don't think so.
I mean, you're a pedophile. But it's not much else that's as bad as
that's
you're
so
a murderer.
Graphic too. She's like,
right. It's not like you just offed him. You fed him to lions, tigers,
right,
bears.
Isn't that like? So not animal abuse? Like, no.
All of these things. It's absolute defamation of character. You cannot have been maligned more. So yeah, if it comes out that he is alive,
she should get an attorney.
Then there it is. She should get an attorney. And our advice of today is
stop talking.
Keep your mouth shut. Y'all, it's so much easier to not have a lawsuit. Prevent a lawsuit, prevent a charge, prevent so many things if you just don't talk.
You have the right to not say anything. Just don't.
You should exercise that right.
Right.
Sometimes it's best not to speak. That is the wise decision. We are asking you to consider your thoughts. Many people should consider this advice.
Yep.
And keep your mouth shut. That's what we have. Like us, follow us, subscribe. Yes. If you're on YouTube, rate us. We would love to get some comments. We would love to know your thoughts and opinions.
Absolutely.
Please put them down.
Wine suggestions as well.
Yes. Ooh,
topic suggestions.
Wine suggestions, topic suggestions. We hit them based on the weekly topics, but if there's something in particular you're seeing that you want a little bit more explanation on or discussion on, we're happy to do that. We are grateful to the people who have kind of spurred us into some of these discussions. Today, we'll put a little call out to them in our descriptions.
Absolutely.
But if you want to hear more, please like and subscribe. And that way others can also find out more about us and the show and be exposed to it. Follow us next week, which should be January 27th, if we've done our calendar and our math right.
The wine helped your math improve.
Maybe it did. So find out which wine we're drinking next week. Find out what cases are going on. Follow us for an update on the Elon Musk trial. And that's the end of the Legal Weekly Wine, brought to you by Tehrani Law, LLC, because you never need a lawyer
till you do.